Just getting situated here. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Gonna put this over here for now. There we go. We're good. All good. Shabbat shalom. So, is everybody here familiar with the book, The Giving Tree by Shel Silverstein? Yep, I'm seeing a thumbs up from Marin's. Nice. I brought the cover in case this jogs anybody's memory. And if you haven't read it, that is also okay. The short of it is that a tree and a boy share a relationship in which the boy goes to the tree for whatever his immediate need is. And the tree, each time, unconditionally and lovingly provides for the boy the best it can. When the boy was young, that meant the tree gave this boy shade to play in, branches to climb. But over the course of his life, the tree gave more and more. Its apples to sell, branches to build a house, and finally its trunk to build a boat, until all that's left of the tree is a stump, which the boy returns to and sits on at the end of the story. Whatever the boy wanted from the tree in a given moment took priority over all else, at the expense of the tree and perhaps of the boys as well. I loved this story when I was a kid. I thought it was a loving story about our dependence on the environment and about growing up. But I came across a different take on this story last year. A playwright named Topher Payne rewrote the ending of The Giving Tree and called it The Tree Who Set Healthy Boundaries. Rather than endlessly giving of itself until there was no more to give, the tree takes up a different tune and says, you know, I've seen boys like you pull this nonsense with other trees all over the forest. First it's the apples, then it's the branches, then the trunk, and before you know it, that mighty beautiful tree is just a sad little stump. Well, look here, boy. I love you like family, but I am not going down like that. And when the boy doesn't receive whatever he wants at that moment, he and the tree actually enter into a more mutual relationship that benefits them both. Instead of ending with an old man sitting on a tree stump, this version of the story ends with grandchildren playing in an even bigger, stronger tree after generations of growth. The tree might not have satisfied the boy's every immediate request, but everyone involved was all the better for it. The issue of when and whether to cut down a tree for its resources appears in this week's Torah portion, Parshat Shoftim. At the very end of a list of wartime rules, we read, when in your war against a city, you must not destroy in Hebrew is lo tashchit, you must not destroy its trees, wielding the axe against them. You may eat of them, but you must not cut them down. Only trees that you know do not yield food may be destroyed. You may cut them down for constructing, and specifically names for constructing during this time of war. Our guidelines are if a tree bears fruit, you can't cut it down. If it doesn't, you can cut it down as long as you have another use for it. Here, the fruit is the key factor, which represents a long-term return. If it doesn't bear fruit, that's another story, but if it does, the Torah suggests that it's in our best interest to forego whatever immediate use we might have for it, including building in a time of war, in exchange for longer-term benefits. Rather than using the tree for a short-term and finite purpose, these verses instruct a more sustained, delayed gratification. These verses became a Jewish ethical principle called Bal Tashchit. Remember, Tashchit is to destroy, and it means do not destroy. We see its origin here about destroying trees, but the rabbis of the Talmud expanded to all different kinds of waste, like wasting lamp oil or needlessly killing animals, And an even later rabbi from the 11th century named Maimonides expands Baal Tashchit even further to include breaking vessels, destroying buildings, or wasting food. And nowadays, these verses have become a foundational text for Jewish environmentalist movements, which apply this principle to our environment and climate as a whole. In each of these examples, Baal Tashchit challenges short-term convenience and short-term needs for longer-term benefit. I take two main lessons from this principle of Baal Tashchit as we see it in the giving tree, in this week's Torah portion, and in the additional applications throughout Jewish history. First and most directly, Baal Tashchit is about conserving the environment. Elsewhere in Jewish literature, a midrash teaches, pay attention that you do not corrupt and destroy God's world. If you corrupt it, there is no one to repair it after you. We are unfortunately facing effects from decades of environmental decisions that have prioritized immediate needs, profits, and use of natural resources over longer-term sustainability. The scientific consensus is that human activity has largely contributed to climate change, which in turn can create erratic weather patterns, forest fires, rising sea levels, and more. Baal Tashchit encourages us, however, to make decisions based on our own longer-term benefit. Leave the fruit tree because while it can make a ramp or a ladder right now, it could feed us for far longer. Or to use the example of the giving tree, leave the tree so the generations after us can also enjoy nature's bounty. When it comes to the environment, it is essential to have the long-term picture in mind, as these verses of Deuteronomy suggest. Secondly, and more personally, we can take the lessons of delayed gratification from Baal Tashchit for our inner lives. In a world in which immediate gratification is almost always available, we can shop anywhere and anytime from our phones, scroll endlessly on social media feeds, pursue any number of readily accessible dopamine sources, really whenever, wherever. The instruction to defer gratification can reap more sustainable and beneficial returns. We're actually done with that one. I'm pretty sure, yeah. As long as it says 6 on it, we're good. And so I started to think about this almost like a retirement account. I could use my paycheck twice a month for anything I want. There are many things I could use it for, but I'm learning that it grows if I leave some of it for later down the road. This wisdom from our tradition is all the more relevant this evening, as we just entered the Hebrew month of Elul, a month of personal reflection, accountability, and goal setting to spiritually prepare for the High Holy Days. There is even a tradition to hear the shofar, the blast of the shofar, each day of Elul, to bring us into this space of heightened awareness and reflection, including around our decisions that can lead to deeper, longer enduring, and more fulfilling returns. I know for myself, I am taking this idea to heart in my daily habits, my relationships, my new job even. I'm reflecting this month on how I can prioritize longer-term, sustainable outcomes over immediate conveniences. There's a story from the Talmud that captures much of what I'm trying to say here. A man named Choni encounters a man planting a carob tree on the side of a road and asks him, "How many years will it take for this tree to bear fruit?" And the man replies, 70. And Choni asks him, "Is it obvious to you that you will live 70 years, so you'll be able to enjoy its fruits?" And the man responds, "I found a world full of carob trees. Just as my ancestors planted for me, I too am planting for my descendants." Planting a tree on the side of the road might not have been his favorite way to spend his time, but the promise of sustainable and long-term benefits made it a fulfilling and worthwhile endeavor nonetheless. for the health of our environment and the health of our own emotional and spiritual lives, for the giving tree as well as the wartime tree, the Jewish value of Bal Tashchit encourages us to avoid destruction through these decisions where we can delay gratification and instead take this opportunity to create sustainable goodness and blessing for ourselves, our loved ones, and the world around us for generations to come.